Okay, go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks for this warm welcome, Hassan and Maria. I'm glad to be here and to have the honor to present a bit about Camunda in this newly founded meetup region. And a bit about myself. My name is Thomas. I'm a developer advocate at Camunda. And previous to this job, I was already a consultant, a solution architect in the company. So I've seen various real-world problems and real-world customers and help them to solve them. So maybe if you do have some further questions in the end, I'm also happy to help them, especially when they are more technical. Great. So I've prepared for you a certain talk. So it's rather general. I will introduce you to Camunda overall. What is our product used for? So on and so forth, and give you a little demonstration. Especially for the first meetup, I think this might be quite valuable for you. Great. So without any further ado, let me share my screen. And then we can start right away with a little presentation I've prepared for you. And that's all about our vision, automate any process anywhere. So that's the goal we as Camunda want to follow with our product, which you are going to see today. Let's see what Camunda is actually. So before targeting or before highlighting the product and all of the facets the product provides, I just want to give you a brief overview about what actually Camunda is. And back in the days, 2008, we were founded by our two co-founders, Jakob Freud and Bernd Rücker, as a purely consulting company. So 2008, we didn't had any kind of product. It was just purely focused on consulting back in the days. But as time flows by, in 2013, they have decided to fork activity, which was back in the days a well-known BPMS system, in order to create their own product called Camunda. And nowadays we do have over 300 employees, 6 worldwide offices, and a lot of people are using Camunda. And of course, especially in this group, we are pretty proud of all the community members we do have, over 100,000, and especially proud of those like Hassan, who are hosting such kind of meetups and are engaging with the community and with the product. At one point in time, we need to earn some more money, and therefore we do also have these kind of enterprise customers, as you can see in this slide as well. Great. So challenge. As you can see in this picture, Camunda wants to solve the problem of how you can leverage diverse technology stacks, but on the same time run all those things on your choice or your platform of choice, whether you want to go on Kubernetes, Docker, or choose to host it on premise. And nevertheless, all those endpoints are important to us as well. For instance, human workers, API calls, IoT devices, service orchestration, or RPA bots. And that's kind of a challenge if you consider that we want to be this kind of technology stack agnostic, endpoint agnostic, and platform agnostic in the end. And that's where Camunda tries to fit in and try to solve these kind of problems you might have. Cool. Let me quickly elaborate a bit further on this topic. Why Camunda? What makes us special? Let's put it this way. And of course, we do focus on this end-to-end orchestration bullet point I've mentioned previously. So we really want to make it possible that you can, for instance, link IoT devices up with human workforce in one overarching process flow. And nevertheless, we want to have everything standard-based. That's also kind of an important thing, that all the processes you build with Camunda are based on the BPMN, the business process model and notation standard, which isn't proprietary. So you do not need to fear any kind of vendor login. And that's also pretty good for the thriving community we do have. Since we are so-called developer friendly, the technology itself is open, so all of our code is published on GitHub. You are free to raise issues, create feature requests, or to just make a pull request to our repositories over there. So we are always happy for engaging community members. And of course, this is one of our key, let's put it, selling features we might have for you to engage with Camunda overall. And of course, in this direction, we can also talk about this open architecture. As said, the product is completely free. You can change source code as you want, and therefore you can embed it into an architecture of your choice. So your architecture doesn't need to fit the product in the end, but the product can be adapted to your architecture without any problems. Great. These are the most important bullet points I want to touch base on. And now let's take a look on the more interesting use cases. Just to align and have everybody on the same page, I want to dive a bit into this topic as well before we will then take a look at the actual product. I think a bit of theoretical backbone might be good to have before doing so. So as you can see, we divide our use cases into 3 columns. One is, for instance, IT initiatives, where you can see such as things like replacing a legacy business process management suite or moving applications into the cloud, where simply a tool or a service orchestrator as Camunda can help. On the other hand, we do also help out with usual business processes, where, for instance, a client of ours or a user wants to model and automate a customer onboarding process or loan origination. And I think the key aspect of these business processes is that we do not focus on a certain sector like banking or telco. It's rather, quite overarching. Every process you can think of and you can model in BPM should be automatable and orchestratable by Camunda. So there aren't any restrictions from that side of things. From a technical point of view, we also have some use cases such as service orchestration. So multiple people out there, multiple companies are using Camunda, for instance, for high throughput microservice orchestration, which is pretty interesting. For instance, maybe a little example, Zalando, a very well-known German fashion reseller, uses Camunda for the order to cash process. And of course, it involves a lot of services for payment, checkout, so on and so forth, which need to be automated. And per day, there are about 1 or 2 million processes triggered in the system. And that's, of course, quite cool to have these technical use cases also supported by Camunda, which result into high load scenarios. Okay, so now you have, or you should have got an idea about the use cases, Camunda itself, and some key aspects the product has. And before we go into the live demo, there's just one more slide, because that's also quite important from a theoretical aspect, and that's the BPMN or the BPM life cycle. In business process management, you typically would start designing those diagrams, as you can see in here, and therefore we do have various collaborative design tools. Afterwards, it is followed by the technical implementation in order to automate the actual process, and we go further with managing the automated process in a so-called tool cockpit, and in the end, we of course want to improve. And I just want to highlight that all of this needs to be some kind of life cycle in order to always improve your deployed business critical processes, for instance. Great. And of course, we do have tools which fit right away into these phases of the life cycle. So now I've talked enough about the theoretical part, and I think it's time to go check out the actual product. And there I do have prepared a little showcase for you I want to touch base on, and that's the Camunda one. So we do have a fictional bank which wants to use Camunda in order to automate the customer onboarding process. And that's the typical web interface or the typical web experience the bank provides to its customer. So that has nothing to do with Camunda at all at this point in time. As a customer of the bank, I could now say, hey, let's discover the different account types, and maybe I will just request whether I can get some kind of premium account, as you see right here. Entering all the information, and then I can send out a certain request to Camunda, and hopefully they will answer soon. And that's the overall setting of today's demonstration of the product. When you do not apply some kind of process automation, of course, it can happen that it takes for ages to receive some kind of answer from Camunda. But luckily, that is not the case because we already received one. So maybe let me pull up my Outlook window, and there you can see right away, hey, they have already messaged me back. They're happy to inform me that the request was accepted. And woohoo, now I can get my premium banking account by Camunda. That's awesome. And that went pretty fast. So how did this happen? Or how did Camunda achieve this kind of goal? And that's, by using this Camunda platform stack and having multiple tools in the design phase, in the automation phase, and in the improvement phase. So let me guide you through all those little tools, which are shown here. First, theoretical, and then, of course, I will show you to them because I think this might be quite valuable. So at some point in time, there's a process owner or process architect at Camunda who wants to capture the current process of the customer onboarding. And that's where you typically would use Cavimo. Cavimo is a web modeling platform which has a focus on collaborative aspects. So you can create a model, share it with people, and you can all brainstorm together in your BPMN model right there. After having done so and aligned with all the stakeholders, you can then transition it to the Camunda modeler in order to really enhance the technical implementations in there. So it's really automatable. And once this is done, it can be deployed to the actual workflow engine, which you do see down here. So there's a workflow engine and decision engine. We do not only support BPMN, but also the decision model and notation called DMN. And therefore, we do have these two engines, which can be used separately if you are interested in. For the automation phase, we also provide some other, let's call it tools. So Cockpit is used in order to take a look on the workflow and decision engine. So for the so-called operator, it's more or less an eye into what's going on there. So if there's an incident, he can resolve it throughout Cockpit, and it lets you control the life cycle of process instances and decision instances. Going further, of course, there's a task list which can be used by Clerk from Camunda in order to simply work on tasks occurring in the workflow. Great. In the end, there's Optimize, which can be used for process analytics in order to further improve the process in the next iteration of the BPM lifecycle, as we've learned previously. Cool. Worth mentioning as well is that all of these tools provide a very open Java and REST API. So you are free to, for instance, replace this task list with a task list of yourself. So you do not need, or there is no need for you to stick to these tools which we provide. You can just build your own upon them and use them as freely as you want. So for now, let's start with Cavimo. So I want to show you the tool, the look and feel. So maybe it can be important to you on your further path, finding out what Camunda actually is and whether it suits you. So we do have Cavimo opened up right here. You can sign in for free. So that's nothing proprietary, just heading to cavimo.com. And this tool provides you the possibility to simply create multiple projects for collaborating with people on processes. For our interest, there is this custom onboarding one, which is used by Camunda. And somewhere here, there's the custom onboarding process. And maybe let's pick this one up and take a look at it, because that's what has happened already while we started the process right here in Camunda. So after we have pressed send request, this kind of BPMN process was triggered. And I think the very good part of this notation is that it's easily readable and interpretable. So maybe let me walk you through for a while. After the application has been received by the process engine, we'll first of all execute some kind of service for obtaining a credit score. Then we'll run through a DMN table, which I will show you later on, in order to check the risk of the application, and dependent whether there isn't any risk or there's a severe risk, we either then issue the application directly or reject it anyway. Of course, this moderate risk path is the most interesting one, because we can have some kind of human collaboration or some user task, because right here there needs to be a clerk, or there needs to be a clerk which decides manually whether an application with a moderate risk can be accepted or needs to be declined. And of course, he has a bit of more freedom. He can either request further documents, be calling another process down there, or in case he is too slow, it can be accelerated to his supervisor. So these are our possibilities we do have in the process used for the custom onboarding from Camunda. Taking a look on Cavimo, as you can see, there's this details panel which allows you to comment on certain activities in the BPMN model. So for instance, down here, a colleague of mine tagged me and asked me to clarify it. So yeah, there are just multiple ways how to get in contact with people and to align on certain activities or objects in the BPMN process. Especially when thinking about business and IT alignment, this might be quite important, or talking about domain-driven design. That's another thing Maria mentioned already in the beginning. You can really drill down the specification from business points of view for one element in here, for this activity, for this flow, or for the overall process. So you have multiple ways to really specify what's necessary. Cool. Yeah, maybe let's continue, and I will show you the DMN modeling functionality, because we haven't taken a look on the risk check, and that's simply a so-called decision table, which might be quite easy to read for you, since it's not that far away from Excel. And yeah, you do have simply some inputs, and dependent on those inputs, you will then decide for a certain output. And of course, you can have various hit policies. So there are multiple of them. And for now, we do collect all the suitable rules in this table. So let's imagine there's an applicant which is under 30 years old and self-employed. Then we would simply execute this rule 3, where the employment of the applicant is under 30 years old, self-employed, and he's going for the premium package. In this case, we could say right away, there's an irregular and possibly lack of income. Due to this, the risk level is 0. So that's how straightforward those DMN tables can be. But nevertheless, do not underestimate the possibilities you do have in here, because I can rather build some very complex decision trees consisting out of multiple decisions, and also some literal expression where I can put some script in, so on and so forth. I'm just having opened up the chat window, so maybe I can touch base a bit on the questions. So whether you can use another decision engine rather than the Camunda decision engine. Of course, you can do so. You're completely free. It's your decision. So that's definitely a possibility you've mentioned there. Great. Yeah, so that's the thing what I wanted to show you in Cavimo itself. And now we can transition to the modeler, because I think technical enhancements might be even more important for you. And the modeler is a desktop application. As you saw, this is a web app. You can host it yourself as well if you want to. But the modeler is our old-fashioned desktop application, which do provide a very powerful property panel. So you can see the same model as shown before in here. And now we can, for instance, select this service task in order to see, or in order to configure how it should be implemented. Because in the end, we need to write code at a certain point in time, or simply configure a bridge to an RPA bot. But right there, we have chosen to go for a delegate expression. And the delegate expression will simply call some kind of Java bean, which then calculates our credit score. Of course, we do not need to rely on Java. We can also rely on some external implementation where we simply push a certain or publish a certain task on Camunda's API, which can be crawled, or which can be get by some kind of external task worker. That's another possibility you do have in here. And all of these things are configured within the model. Also, touching base on those user tasks, we can define some candidate groups, which refer to groups in our identity access management system, and we can set due dates, so on and so forth. Great. Yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail right here, since we, of course, have a bit of a time pressure. And therefore, I would rather introduce you to the actual application where we can see how the process behaves once it's deployed onto the process engine. So back to our browser, we have now discussed about those design and implementation aspects, and now we can further go to the automation box right here, where we can see cockpit and task list. And since the engines don't have any UI, there's not much to show you right there, at least from my point of view. And now I will just introduce you to the functionality cockpit provides for the operator, who then needs to handle incidents and to manage the lifecycle. And cockpit, of course, it's also targeting at a more technical audience. And it gives you a quick overview at a first glance. You can see how many process instances are currently running, how many tasks you have got, and of course, how dependent on the time your process instances or decision instances evolved. So you might gather some feedback whether you need to scale up your system anytime soon, or whether the numbers are still good to go. So let's take a look at the customer onboarding process used by Camunda. So this is now the deployed and automated process we have seen previously. And yeah, as you can see, there isn't much right now we could discuss, but I do have a little trick because I can switch to the history view. And having done so, I can also see this running process instance which has flown through the system. I can open up the process instance itself, even though it has completed, and I can check on those variables which have been in there. Yeah, so as you see, the applicant name, it was me. So this was the instance we have started previously, it was Thomas. I can see the application number, which should match my application number right here. So in case the customer has any questions, we can identify the process instance by such kind of business key. And I also have an insight into those complex objects, which contains my email address, my birth date, so on and so forth. Great. Just to show you some more capabilities of this tool, maybe let's go and create a new process instance, which then is going to result into this human task where a clerk needs to decide on the application. Therefore, going back to Camunda, we'll just refresh and choose the premium package. And going for the yellow path, I do have this little tool, entering the name again. And now I was a bit clumsy and forgot the @ in my mail address, and the front-end engineers have apparently forgotten to add some validation to this form. Nevertheless, it's possible for me to send it out. Okay, going over to the cockpit once again and switching to the runtime view, we can now see that there's one running process instance waiting for a clerk to pick it up and to work on. Once again, I can access all the information here, all the variables. So that's pretty decent and pretty nice. And I also have the possibility to check the credit score. And I can also, in the history view, see which decision instance or why a certain decision has been executed. So taking a look on here, dependent on the variables, I can see that the rule 3 and 4 has been evaluated as true, and due to this, the risk level is simply yellow, and the customer or the applicant is not trustworthy. Cool. But maybe let's focus on what we've been doing in Cockpit, and now also on what the actual clerk is going to see in the end. So as said, we are waiting here at this point in time, and now need to work manually on this application or on this decision, and therefore I can simply open up the task list. Task list itself is provided within the Camunda package, more or less. Let's put it this way. And you can choose to use it, or you can just implement your own task list, as mentioned previously. That's quite commonly seen to have a standalone web application connecting to Camunda in order to fetch tasks and display them in another way to your clerks or to clerks of a company, especially when it comes to fitting such task lists to the UX the company or the people are used to. That's quite an important thing. Great. Nevertheless, let's pick up our task. So we should have it right here, decide on application. I do have a list where I can choose from. I can create filters on the left side, for instance, for certain candidate roles. So for instance, I can switch to, apparently that's in German, to management. I would only see some kind of management topics. Nevertheless, let's stay here and focus on the clerk. And the clerk himself can then claim a task and work on the decision. He can request further documents, for instance, the more information about the income, or he can just make a decision right away. So of course, the history is logged. A clerk can take a look on the diagram to understand what kind of role he plays in the process. And apparently that's quite important for a lot of people to understand why they have to do a certain task and to understand which place they take in such broader process. So plenty of possibilities, but in the end, we need to make the decision. And in this case, we have already seen that Thomas has got his premium package approved previously. And so this might be simply fraud or something has went wrong, and we will just deny it. Completing it and going back to the Camunda cockpit. As we intended, the process moved down to send the rejection, but now something bad has happened. There's a red bubble, and this indicates there's an incident. And that's a thing where this process operator needs to get active because he needs to resolve this incident. And therefore, we can just take a look what the stack trace says. So there's a message, we can take a look on the stack trace, and that's fairly easy. The recipient's address doesn't contain a valid domain component. So it even says, hey, there's a missing @ sign. And now we need to just figure out how we can add this @ sign to our process instance. And therefore, yeah, we do have this complex object for our application, and I can step into here and just edit it, confirming the change, and then we only need to retry. And that's it, fairly simple. Resolve a very easy incident in order to resume the process instance. Of course, that's just a fairly easy example, but there can be way more different types or difficult types of incidents which can occur. For instance, a service task of yours went down due to some proxy or connection issues. And then you, of course, can also use other kind of recovery methods provided in this cockpit. I don't want to introduce too much right now, but I guess these are the most important aspects. And by the way, we just have received our mail from Camunda that apparently request was declined. Cool. So maybe I will just switch to the history view right here. You can see now the process has terminated successfully, and maybe also important to you, all the activities are logged in our audit log. So even though there was an incident and the process has terminated, I can see what has happened in there. And I can also take a look on the user operation. So in this case, the demo user or the operator has set a variable and changed the variable. So all this is captured in here. Cool. Switching back to our overarching view and taking a look on the time, maybe there's this last tool which might be even more interesting for you, called Optimize, because this makes it possible to analyze your process and to find bottlenecks, inefficiencies, so on and so forth. So maybe let me pull it up and introduce you to all the capabilities this tool provides. Hopefully I'm still logged in. Let's see. Yeah. That's the German version. Let me switch. So generally speaking, you can create multiple collections in here, which simply consists of multiple reports and dashboards. And for one collection of multiple collections, I can configure those data sources, which are used in order to fetch data for the visualization. I can, of course, assign users, so on and so forth, and configure alerts. So for instance, in case a certain report has fallen below or rise above a threshold, I can notify someone which is interested in it. For instance, some kind of manager who wants to keep track of all the crucial numbers of the business processes. Opening up one dashboard, we can see that this dashboard simply consists out of multiple reports and gives you quite a lot of information at a first glance. So there's this KPI bar, which lets you see right away how many started applications we've had in the current month. So right now, we are quite close to our goal. There are a few days to go until November is over. So fair enough, we can still make it. And down below, you have various heat maps. One indicates how the process instances flew through your system. So you can see in the beginning, we started with 100%, and in the end, only 96% of all incoming applications have been accepted. Whereas, 30.2% have been declined. So all this information is available in this kind of tile. On the right side, you can then take a look on the quite interesting duration of a process instance, at which stage or at which activity or flow node does a process instance took longest. And there you can see, hey, decide on application takes an average 1 day and 11 hours. So we might want to get faster here, but this request further documents call activity, which calls another standalone process, takes in total 4 days and 10 hours. But in the end, we are waiting for the customer to return those documents. So maybe that's not crucial. And later on, I will show you how you can simply configure this the way you want to see the information. Cool. Maybe going a bit further down, you can also see that there's the possibility to draft some or to create some bar charts, some pie charts, or usual graphs in order to display data which is contained inside of the process instance. And of course, there's also this possibility to to evaluate your DMN table. So of course, this only applies to a solution where you use the Camunda DMN engine and not any proprietary or other DMN engine. But yeah, you can see right away how often a certain rule has been executed and evaluated as true. Maybe last thing, which might be very interesting for end-to-end process automation. Camunda is also capable of creating these end-to-end heat maps. So even though only our customer onboarding process is automated in Camunda, Optimize can catch events coming from other systems in order to create this end-to-end overview. And that's pretty awesome. So opening up this event-based process tab, I can take a look on a certain model which was designed in here, and I can map events, for instance, as you can see down below, to certain elements. So whenever there's an event coming from another system, so you need to throw them, of course, but once they arrive at Optimize, it can be successfully matched to an according BPMN element, so you do not lose this overarching view. Cool. As promised, a last thing I quickly wanted to do together with you is to create a new report where we'll then create a heat map which suits our requirements or which suits our estimations we want to focus on. Going with the customer onboarding process for all versions, creating this report, and now we simply need to select some kind of view, and we want to focus on the flow node, not the count, but the duration, and we want to add some target values. Target values are this kind of important metric which lets you specify that, for instance, the clerk should be done deciding on an application in 1 business day. So let's say 8 hours. Whereas requesting the document, it's totally fine if this takes 4 days, because as mentioned, we are waiting for the customer at this stage. And maybe accelerate decision-making should take no longer than 2 hours. Applying this, we can see a more accurate heat map, which indicates right away where we need to get active and what we need to resolve in order to make our process more efficient. Okay, taking a look on the time, it does look good. I can finish up in time. That's good for Hassan and for all of you. And I think all these questions which occurred so far will be answered in the end in the overall Q&A session. These are just too much to answer in 2 minutes of time. Cool.
Okay, now I believe we are going to present a simple use case in which we have utilized the decision engine as a Java library. Let me share my screen. One minute. Okay. Okay, now. Okay, now can you see? I believe we can see. Okay. I will try to go through it in a hurry so we can have a good time to answer your questions. Okay. So here is the brief about the Camunda daemon engine. Is a Java library which can evaluate decisions based on the daemon standard definition. Okay. In this presentation, we are going to show a simple use case in which we have utilized Java. We have utilized the decision engine as a Java library embedded in an application. Okay, so here are the list of steps we followed. Okay, to utilize decision engine as a Java library, adding the engine as a dependency. Okay, using Maven, bootstrap the daemon engine using the default configuration, and finally parsing and executing the decision. Okay. Let me explain our case, okay? An engine from within an ECM solution. ECM solution is enterprise content management solution, okay? So our case, okay, or our major, the major requirement was to have the folder structure created automatically based on the supplied metadata values and based on the classification of the document to be added or stored in our ECM repository. So since there is no out-of-the-box feature in our ECM solution to do such requirement, then the only way was to in our ECM solution, we have a Java event action which we can implement to do the required implementation. Okay, in our case, this can be implemented as a set of if-else conditions. Okay, but we didn't prefer this kind of hard-coded solution for so many reasons. You know that from readability perspective and also from maintainability perspective, it is not a good practice to do it this way. So we thought about using or utilizing a decision engine of Camunda as a Java library. Okay, since we have the capability to utilize it as a Java library and to call it from within the event action, okay, provided by our ECM solution. So we decided to have a proof of concept, okay, and we succeeded in implementing our proof of concept, and then we went with that approach. Okay, this is how it works. Here we have a document added to our content management solution. Okay, so we have creation event, or even in case of metadata values get updated. Okay, then we have update event. Okay, triggered. Okay, event is triggered. Okay, then Java event action is triggered and executed synchronously. Okay, from within the Java event action, okay, we managed to utilize the decision engine of Camunda. So simply we are passing the parameters we needed as inputs, and then we managed to get the output variables we need. Okay, in our case, because in addition to creating folder structure automatically, there was a need to also to assign default security roles based on a predefined set of business rules. Okay, and this actually is a demonstrate of implementing the default the assigning of default security roles. Okay, so here this as we can see here, we have the folder structure. Okay, a sample. Okay, so we have a root folder, then the country level folder, city, and finally the type folder level. Okay, for the root folder, okay, the default security role to be assigned should be all view role. So all staff should be able to view the root folder. Okay, because no specific security to be assigned for that one. Okay, for the second level, which is the country level, in this case, as an example, we have country set to Saudi Arabia. Okay, as a metadata value. Okay, using our ECM solution. Okay, and for this second level, okay, we have the folder depth is set to number 2. Okay, as an output, okay, here as you can see to the right side, we have an output variables, the expected output. Okay, we should have security roles set to Saudi Arabia view. Okay, so whoever belong to Saudi Arabia country should be able to view this this folder. Okay, the third level is the city level folder. Okay, here we have, for example, subfolder for Mecca city. Okay, so each one should have a different role. Okay, for example, for Riyadh, we have Riyadh view role, and for Mecca, we have Mecca view role. Okay, here also as an output, we have an inheritable depth. So for the inheritable depth is set to this object only. Okay, and for the last one, the leaf folder, let's see, which is the type. Okay, here we have a set of a group of security roles to be assigned. Okay, and the inheritable depth should be this object and all children. Okay, as we can see here for type A, we have Saudi Arabia Riyadh type A full role, we have edit role, and we have a view role. Okay, so this is the intended default security. Okay, to do that, okay, we have implemented this conditional security roles. Okay, using a decision table. As we can see here, we have as input the folder depth, country, and city, and finally the type. Okay, all of these are input variables. Okay, as we can see, for folder depth 1, which is the root folder, okay, regardless of the values supplied for country, city, and type, default or the output of security roles would be all of you. Okay, for the second business rule here, we can see that if the input of folder depth is 2, which means the country level folder, okay, and the country value is Saudi Arabia, then regardless of values supplied for city and type, the assigned security role should be Saudi Arabia view. Okay, and the third one, and so on. So the third one is the business rule related to city. Okay, so we have here folder depth 3, we have country as Saudi Arabia, and we have city as Riyadh. In that case, we have the special city role assigned. Okay, the last one is for the leaf folder. Okay, so we have also the type, okay, specified. type A. So, and in that case, we have three default security roles to be assigned, okay? And as we can see here, we have for the three top rules, we have zero value. Okay, zero value means this object only. And for the last one, we have the value of -1, which has the meaning of this object and etc. Okay. طبعا for sure this is a simplified version of what we have, but for example we might let's say just to show what we can do. For example, we might have the same let's say default security role assigned for both levels. I mean the country and the city. So in that case, maybe there is no need to have a specific security role assigned for the city. So in that case, we can have one business rule only defined for both folder levels, I mean for country and city. So as we can see here, we have folder depth set to either 2 or 3, and in case if it is 2 or 3, okay, and the country is set to Saudi Arabia, then default security role should be assigned to Saudi Arabia view, okay, and zero values this object only. Okay, this is just an example of a little change or a little update that we can do. And there is no need to have a specific security for the city level. Okay. طبعا for sure يعني we don't have the time to go much more يعني in details, but there are so many يعني possibilities يعني in decision engine of Camunda, and you can even implement more complex decision requirement diagram. So you can even have multiple decisions, okay, with relations defined between all of these decisions. But in this demonstration, just the purpose is to give you an idea of how and when we can utilize decision engine as a Java library. And in this case, we managed to utilize it as a Java library from within our ECM or enterprise content management solution. Okay. I believe now we can go ahead with the questions we have. Okay, let me check. Okay, let's check the questions we have. Let's start. Okay, just here is a question. In case if my process have a service task which is invoking a REST service via HTTP connector, and my REST service is sending a JSON response having multiple attributes, then how can I pass that to a subsequent step in the process? Thomas, can you?
Yeah, of course, I'm happy to answer them. I've made a list already to didn't lose any questions throughout, since I will miss them in the chat definitively. So this is quite a good question. So as you've mentioned, you will probably write some kind of service task in some kind of programming language. Either you can choose to have it external or as Java delegate, something like this. And of course, you can receive some kind of JSON response. And you can decide how you want to include this JSON into your process. So typically, you would then say, hey, I will set a certain variable to the execution of my process instance. And by doing so, you can then either map your JSON to an object in Java and deal with it that way, or you can set the JSON right away. So it depends what you prefer. There are always multiple possibilities and dependent on what you want to achieve, I guess there's a way to do it.
Okay, great. Okay, let me move because it seems I missed some questions. Okay, the first one was, will the deployment aspect be covered as part of this? I believe this is already answered. Okay, can we use drones instead of DMN here?
Yep, this is possible. So you can always configure some kind of external task worker, which then is treated as a service task. You can pass informations to another rules engine, like rules, and then receive an answer, which is then be passed back into the process. So yeah, basically that's easily possible.
Okay, great. Let me go to next one. Okay, I have a question about this daemon tables. Can we connect one process with multiple daemon tables, and is it recommended?
Yeah, why not? It's possible, and if you need it, you should do it.
Yes.
And of course, dependent on how you want to slice your decision, you can build this rather complex decision trees to make multiple decisions at once. But if this doesn't work out, you can just have multiple decision tables linking or linked in your process diagram. That's no problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Let me my process.
Oh, no.
Okay, this one. Answer. Can we do automatic? Okay, there's a question here. Can we do automatic routing of tasks using algorithms like load balancing?
This question wasn't totally clear to me. Are you talking about load balancing for human beings? So tasks, I would expect that you would typically want to route them towards users. What I do see quite often is that you could replace the task routing engine, so that you use some kind of other framework in order to route the task towards an individual. But you could also create, based on DMN, some kind of skill-based routing. And then your DMN decision tree will decide whether this task will go to a certain person or not. And you could then, for instance, say, yeah, dependent on how many tasks this person already got, you can message us back somehow and then access it and say, hey, this person has enough tasks and shouldn't get it. So there's, I guess the most easiest one is to just use another router for this task handling. But of course it should be capable, or DMN should be capable of doing it as well if you want to model a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Here is a question from Muhammad Reza. Okay, what is the difference between service task and external task concepts?
That's a good question. So generally speaking, a service task can be external or, let's say, internal. So a service task, it depends on how you want to implement it. So even though you do have an external task, it's a service task in the end. So when you would work with Java and Camunda, you can rely on those Java delegates because you easily can call a Java bean. But if you do not work in the Java environment, or if you don't want to have a BPM monolith where all of your logic is encapsulated in one Spring Boot application, you could choose this external task concept. And the external task concept consists from a standalone application which connects to Camunda's API, fetching a task, working on a task, and then messaging the results back via REST. And that's basically implementation-wise different, but not from a BPMN point of view. Yeah, that's a good question.
Great.
I think.
Is it possible to store streaming data in Camunda engine as variable?
That's a bit more difficult. So
Maybe.
when we talk about streaming data, are you referring to events coming from Kafka or something like this? Or yeah, okay, I see it in the chat. Yeah. So yeah, this is possible. What you typically would do is to have some kind of, let's call it proxy. So there's a proxy connected to Kafka, and as soon as there's an event for the Camunda engine, the proxy will take the event and translate it to REST so that it can be communicated to the process engine. It's worth mentioning that the process, or that Camunda, can publish an event with, for instance, a service task right away to Kafka, but you need to have this extra proxy if you want to receive information. And then, of course, you can store it.
Okay, this one. How Camunda is different from Red Hat GBPM?
Yeah. That's a good question. I apparently can't answer you because I've never worked with Red Hat. Sorry.
Okay.
Not sure. Do you know something about it, Hassan? Or
no. I'm.
Of course, from the engine standpoint, Camunda is very, very lightweight compared to JPPM, and of course, the way you can like plug any user interface, like could be an AngularJS application or a React application, you can plug it with Camunda, and that's like a starter. And then, of course, now with the Camunda cloud, you could pretty much run everything over cloud, and you can like spin off instances pretty easily, which I don't think JBPM is yet at that space. And of course, the forum is really, really strong for Camunda. I think we see a champion right now on the screen.
Good to know, Abdul Qadir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks
for your contribution. Thanks.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay.
Question is like, how would you like? How is modeling different in ZB compared to Camunda? Was my question. Like, I know that ZB is kind of getting popular as well, but I wanted to know like, how is it different? I know Camunda comes with a lot of a huge tool set, but I'm not sure how we do that in ZB. So that was one of my questions.
That's a pretty good question. So generally speaking, the modeling is pretty similar. So I'm not sure whether all elements are supported yet, which are supported in platform, but most of them are. And you would typically model as you're used to. There's only one little change, and the BPMN extension elements are called differently. So you cannot just simply take a process model from Camunda BPM or Camunda platform and transition or to throw it to cloud, because that apparently won't work. And of course, there's a bit of a differentiation to how you specify those technical implementations in the property panel, especially since in cloud there is no kind of Java delegate or something like this. And also Camunda platform relies on the Nashorn JavaScript engine, which is deprecated by now. And Camunda Cloud doesn't use JavaScript at all, as far as I know. And the expressions for routing process instances out of exclusive gateways do look a bit differently, but fairly easy as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But you can just try it out. Maybe that's also worth mentioning.
I mean, because I tried out, but then I thought there is something different because I'm pretty used to the Camunda modeler and the properties panel. All that is like kind of easy, and then here I don't see that. So I'm like, I think the product is still being built, so I don't see those features. Is what I was assuming. But I think it's different here. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, here is a good question. Can we use another language instead of Java, say Python?
I think Maria has already answered, and that's a clear yes. So by using this external task pattern, you do not need to rely on Java, whatever. And also when it comes to to choosing the Camunda distribution. So there's, for instance, Camunda platform run, which is already pre-packaged. So you do not need to care about any kind of pipelines which need to contain Java. And you can just spin up your Python task workers. There's also a community package, which makes it possible to easily fetch and complete tasks from Camunda's API. So yeah, it's definitively possible.
Okay, another question. Can we make call to external REST API directly from the business process modeling notation? If yes, how we can do that?
It is possible by using a so-called connector. But I'm not a big fan of these. I wouldn't recommend using them, to be honest. So yeah, you could choose when having a service task, you can say, hey, I'm going for a so-called connector. And then you can configure the connector to call a certain REST endpoint, and you can set input and output parameters. So this would be possible, but I would rather recommend to just implement one HTTP client yourselves and then use it quite generically, because it gives you more flexibility. And in my opinion, there is this kind of, how is it called? Mismatch that you store technical information in the business model. So I would try to have as less technical attributes in the business process model than possible. Yeah. Okay.
Can you suggest to us some resource practices, design patterns of process modeling?
I just posted a link into the chat. So there are Camunda best practices. When you click on this link, you can see, for instance, yeah, various articles, and there's a paragraph for modeling. And yeah, I would just recommend clicking around there and see whether some of those BPMN or DMN best practices will help you.
Okay, one question here. Can we have multiple instances of same business process modeling notation running in an environment?
So you are referring to, so of course, one process definition can have multiple process instances on it. And if this questions go into the area of application level sharding, this is also a possibility. So you could spin up multiple Camunda engines featuring the same process, and then have some kind of load balancer and route processes according to the business key, for instance, to another process engine. Not sure whether this answers your question, but yeah, I guess that's a possibility though.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Thomas. We have no more questions. If anyone would like to ask a question, feel free to ask. Can ask.
Hassan, how is the adoption of open source, especially Camunda as a BPM product in UAE? Like I see that you come from a Middle East sort of a background. So how is the adoption there?
Sorry, Abdul Qadir, I didn't get your question.
How is the adoption of Camunda as a product, like open source BPM as a product in Middle East, like in different organizations there, like petroleum industry is kind of rich there. How are they adapting to this open source platforms, be like Camunda, CB, like that?
Okay, if you are, I don't know if you are referring to Camunda as a company, what, or if you are referring, or if you need to hear from us if there are some successful examples.
That's right.
Yes, good. Okay, because for me, okay, actually, I know some friends. Okay, currently they are moving from in-house developed workflow. Okay, and they are moving to Camunda engine. They are almost in the final stages. Okay, to have it as a live engine. Okay, but and as I know, also they are using the community version. Okay, from my experience with my previous employer, we managed also to install or to use the Camunda engine as an embedded process engine. Okay, we managed to deploy it to WebSphere actually, and okay, with high availability. Okay, it is
That's nice.
it
That's
is
good to know.
deployed. Yeah, it was deployed actually on multiple nodes, WebSphere nodes, and we managed to connect it to Microsoft SQL server database. Okay, it was also a success story. Okay, this is from my experience with my previous employer actually. Okay, we managed to do that, and actually it was also a community edition that.
Maybe, yeah, maybe I
Thank you.
can
That
add
was
something as well, because I was back in the days in the consulting team also responsible for the Middle East region. So there's definitely some kind of interest coming from also governments, so on and so forth. And we do have, I'm not sure whether they are publicly announceable, but there are multiple customers in this region already. And it's quite interesting to see, because what I have learned so far is that typically what have been chosen in the past were systems like IBM, so rather bigger BPM monolithical systems. And now there is a trend where they start to shift to a more lightweight architecture, especially since IBM has canceled some features which were important to them. But yeah, such kind of things, at least I noticed.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for sharing.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, following on Abdelkader's point, is there like specific sectors do you see that they're adopting this platform, Camunda, or is it just across the board?
What I do see quite often is, especially in government and banking, in those two sectors, at least from what I've worked on. I'm not sure, Hassan, how it looks on your side, and whether you can confirm this, or whether you do have other examples in other industries. But yeah.
As I said, the example I have is the one I managed to lead with my previous employer. Actually, we managed to implement a success story there using Camunda Community Edition. Okay, and it was deployed on IBM WebSphere. Okay, as application engine with high availability, taken into consideration, and the process engine was connected to Microsoft SQL database. This is the one I worked in personally. Okay, but as I said, I have also friends who are currently working, okay, and actually in the final stages of implementing also let's say process applications using Camunda engine. Okay, and actually they are moving from in-house developed engine to Camunda as a workflow engine. Do we have any additional questions?
I'll probably ask one. Is there any cases or when do you move away from community edition to something a little bit more?
Okay, I believe maybe Thomas can answer this, but from my end, I can, the enterprise edition for sure. You can start with the community edition, but for sure, as I know, for enterprise edition, you have the full the full features with the cockpit application, and also you have the optimizer application, which is not part of the community edition. Okay, optimizer application is a great tool which can be used in the improvement phase mentioned by Thomas. As we have 4 phases, one of the phases is the improvement, and optimizer is a great tool actually to be used in that phase. Thomas, can you add from your end?
Yeah, I think what we do see is customer move to the enterprise edition when they especially are working on business critical processes, which are crucial for their businesses, because then they want to have customer success management, access to consulting and support. So this can be fundamental if you want to have your order management process automated. It might be important to you. And for those processes, of course, it makes then sense to have access to optimize for improving simply the process overall. But for little processes which just need which just are there for supporting the overall business critical process, you do not need to get the enterprise edition, really. That's my opinion on it.
Okay, if we don't have any questions, I believe we can wrap up. Do we have any additional questions?
No, just thank you, Hassan, and thank you, Thomas, for your presentations and for all the good questions. I think that will give Hassan a very good idea of what to present in upcoming meetups. Where is your interest? So yeah, your questions are also very, very valuable.
Sure. Okay, I would like now I believe we can we can say goodbye for everyone, and I hope that in our future events we can manage to talk about some more interesting topics. Okay, I believe still you can suggest what topics we can talk about in our future events. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you. I would like to thank everyone for joining us. Okay, that's all. Okay, see you all. Bye. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Allah Jazakallah khair.
Thanks and goodbye.